I'm Ryan Taylor, and this is the 2026 recap for the February sales data in New Brunswick. Now, before we get started, just like January, this is a very small sample size, so I'm not going to focus too much on the single month of February. I'm just going to focus more on the year to date. I will still cover that month, but it's going to be a little bit more of a focus on the total sample size so far. Also, we are going to be focused more on the median price as opposed to the average. Just when you have these small sample sizes of data, the average can really go all over the place and the median is a little bit more accurate. And I will still cover the average price, but it's going to be a lot more focus on the median. All right, starting with Fredericton, and I'm going to be reading these off, so I won't be looking at the camera. I'm sorry if it's distracting. Also, I'm not using the images in this, as most people that listen to this channel actually don't watch it, they just listen to it. However, if any of you do want the graphics, I can add them back in, no problem. So the median price in Fredericton was $373K on the month and $332K year to date. This is up from January's $295K, and this is a normal thing where the market will increase in price from January to February. Now, the sales for February, they were up a very little bit, up 1.7% from February of last year, but still down 1.8% year to date. So they're about in line with what they were in 2023, both year to date and for the month. New listings were up 22.5% for February and up 4.4% year to date. Active inventory was up 6% for February and up 4% year to date. The SNLR was at 57%, so balanced market. Year to date, it's 60%. So technically seller's market, but barely. Now, both of these are actually the worst since at least 2020. MOI is sitting at 3.9 for the month. Year to date, it's 4.1. So this is slightly higher than last year at 3.7. The median and the average price were both up 5.9 and 11.2% respectively. Year to date, the average is down 0.8% and the median was up 4.7%. The sale to list price ratio was at 98%, which is down from 100.1% last year. Median days on market was slightly down at 23, down from 26 last year, but year to date, it's at 35, which is up from 31. So what we saw in Fredericton was a little bit of a heating up, but very modest, and some stats did not quite improve. However, there was definitely a clear increase from January to February. I don't know exactly what would cause that, but it is a small sample size, so it's something to monitor. Fredericton, outside of the government jobs, still has a very stable job market with the military jobs and a lot of unionized jobs around the area. This shouldn't really surprise anyone. This is a very resilient market with a much more stable job base than what you'll see elsewhere in the province. And it's definitely something I think is going to continue to outperform the rest of the province in terms of stability at the very least. All right, now on to St. John. So the median price, and this is a little bit of a doozy. The median price was at $342K for the month and $338K year to date, which is up from $328K in January. So a normal increase from the January to February median price. The sales were down for February 26.6%, and year to date, they were also down 12.9%. New listings were up 2.5% for February and up 8.6% year to date. Active inventory is up 5% for February and 2.6% year to date. The MOI for February shot up to 4.7 from 3.3, and year to date, it's at 4.4. So unlike Fredericton, this market is actually slowing down. The SNLR was down to 58.4%. Last year in February, it was 81.5%, and year to date, it's 61.5%. So technically still in the seller's market, the second best market year to date in the province, but one that is slowing down quite quickly, at least from what we've seen in the February stats from the January stats. Median days on market essentially unchanged, 28.5 days for the month of February, 40 days year to date, and the sale to list price ratio is still over 100%, and last year was at 102.3%. Now, obviously, this is a small sample size and it's quite early on, but I think what we're starting to see here is the effect of tariffs manifesting in the real estate market. I'm not sure exactly where this goes, but that is a very concerning 1 month trajectory of data. I am someone who definitely felt and continues to feel that St. John has more upside than a lot of other parts of the province, but I did say it was going to be volatile, and I'm not going to say this is exactly what I meant, but this is definitely volatility. Now, Northern New Brunswick, technically the best real estate market in the province for now. The median is at $226K, both for the month and year to date, which is actually down from January, which is a little bit unusual. The sales were up 4.6% on the month and 3.6% year to date. New listings up 9.9% on the month and 6% year to date. Active listings were down 12.7% on the month and down 11.3% year to date. The SNLR was down from 71.7% to 68.3% on the month. Year to date, that's 63%. And the MOI on the month was down from 7.4 to 6.2. And year to date was down 8.4 to 7.2. So the MOI is high, but it's always been high in this area. This is the only market in the entire province that has actually seen positive movement in the MOI, meaning the MOI is going further down. But I don't know how long this will last. The average price was up 5.1% on the month, and the median was up 10.5%. Year to date, both of these numbers are up 4.6%. Median days on market are actually down for both the month and year to date. 69 days on market for the month, 72 year to date. So this is pretty surprising. I didn't think that Northern New Brunswick would have the hottest real estate market 2 months into the year of 2026. I would be very surprised if this continues, but so far this is a market that is outperforming the rest of the province considerably. However, keep in mind, cheap price points at like 226. That might have something to do with it. All right, now on to Moncton, the area I know the best. Now, unfortunately, because of these small sample sizes, I can't really do too much with the data for areas like Dieppe or home styles like the semis or detached. It's a very small sample size overall. So as the year progresses, I will be able to do a little bit more in-depth data analysis for these categories. But for now, I'm just going to have to focus on Moncton as a whole. So the median price was $375K on the month, $370K year to date, but up from January, which is $360K. So a normal increase from January to February. Usually the median does increase for those 2 months. Sales were down 10.3% for the month and down 3.8% year to date. New listings were also down 6.8% for the month and 4.5% year to date. Despite this, the active inventory was up 7.6% for the month and 9.7% year to date. Now, one thing I will say is there was a lot of expirations and cancellations, so we're likely to see a relatively large bump in new listings over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Typically in Moncton, March, April, we see a lot of new listings. Anyways, the sale to new listing ratio, 56% for the month and 57.5% year to date. This is nearly a 10-year low. 2019, for comparison, had a 74% SNLR for February, and it's a full 10% lower than 2019 year to date. So this is a market that is definitely slowed down more than any other market in the province compared to the last 10 years. The MOI currently sits at 5.4. Year to date, it's 5.2. So that MOI is creeping up at a time of year really when it shouldn't. And we're likely to see that MOI continue to increase throughout the spring market. Typically, the MOI is not above 4 this time of year. So this is a much higher number than I think anyone, including myself, expected. However, despite everything in Moncton, the average price is up 9.5% for the month, and the median was up 5.8%. And again, average prices are not super good, and this is why I don't like to use them. Year to date, the average is up 1.4% and the median is up 4.2%. So that 300 to 375K median, I feel it's very much on the steep side for the Moncton area. Obviously, not every single spot in Moncton is going to have that median, but just in general, I don't think we should be that high. Given inflation and housing and all that stuff, I still feel that median is a lot more comfortable if it's closer to 330. I predicted earlier, I thought it would go 320 to 330, maybe 335. I'm thinking 330. I don't want to say it's the floor, but it's definitely the more realistic short-term floor. I really don't see the case for this median to go any higher. I mean, once you start getting to 400K median, that's expensive. Who knows what that would make Dieppe be? Because Dieppe over 400K median, I don't know. It's tough to really look at that and think, yeah, Moncton should have a median price of almost $400,000. That's a little bit crazy. Anyways, the sale to list price ratio, 97.2%. That's about in line with what it's been the last couple of years. Essentially, you're looking at 3% off of any listing that's not brand new on average. The median days on market for the month is 29. Year to date sits at 50. So the market is definitely slowing down. And it's taking a longer time to sell things, stale inventory, all that stuff. And a lot of the new listings, by the way, are listings that did not sell. Now, I know I said I wouldn't go too much into specific categories. However, the detached sales were down 15.2%. The new listings were also down 13.9%. Active inventory was flat. MOI 5.3. Average and median price both up 3.2 and 5.7% respectively. Sale to list price ratio of 96.5 and median days on market of 50. So a little bit more wiggle room in that detached category, likely due to how much more expensive they are on average than the semis, generally speaking. Now, some noteworthy news. The banks, at least some of the banks, have backed off of the forecasts of rate hikes. I really don't think this should surprise anyone. I didn't really understand the case for rate hikes. I mean, we're looking at an economy that is essentially on the verge of a recession. Another quarter of negative GDP growth, I believe, puts us at least very close to it. Anyways, a weakening economy makes it really hard for the bank to not justify rate cuts. However, it's very important to say, I do not think that these are going to stir housing activity. I think the credit limits in the country are more or less tapped out, especially here in Atlantic Canada. Next week, there's going to be a Market Pulse Equifax event. It's a webinar where they go over the credit market, and it'll be interesting to see where New Brunswick stacks up on this. Because right now, New Brunswick's inflation is running hot, and the delinquencies are definitely rising faster than they should. In other unrelated news, this is not quite news, this is actually from January, but I found it today on the Open Moncton website, so it's an open data website, and I'm going to read this verbatim. The city of Moncton has reached a historic milestone in 2025, issuing a record-breaking $477.9 million in building permits. This is the highest annual total in the city's history. This new record surpasses the previous record of $366 million in 2022. So we're building a lot of apartments in Moncton. This should not surprise anyone who's been in Moncton. However, if you're coming down to Moncton for the first time in, say, like 2 years, drive downtown, drive deep into Riverview. They are building so many of these things, and I'm not sure how well they are renting out. It'll be interesting to see where the vacancy rates go. Now, in those permits, residential projects make up 44% of the total permit value, and we added 1,367 new housing units last year, which is a record. With that being said, we have some very interesting news coming out. The labor force survey comes out on the 7th, Equifax on March 9th. March 12th, we see the January building permit data. March 16th, we see the CPI data. And March 27th, we see the GDP figures. So this is going to be a very eventful month in real estate news. And we'll definitely be covering that here on this channel. Now, just very anecdotally, March so far, we have seen 88 new listings, 43 price drops, 42 sales, 104 expired listings, 5 canceled, 6 withdrawn. Active inventory sits at 2,460 across New Brunswick, 943 in Moncton alone, 674 in Northern New Brunswick, and about 420 in Fredericton and St. John each. Now, my general opinion and advice for buyers. If you are a buyer looking to buy a house in the Moncton area, there are some good deals coming up, not as many as you would expect. However, exercise patience, but also don't hesitate if you see a good deal. You're more likely to see the good deals in price drops or homes that have been on the market for 15 days or more. I say that because of the way the conditions work here in New Brunswick. Oftentimes, you're going to get more competition if you go for a new listing because that's what everyone else is going to be doing. I like to say be a vulture. Go for the listings that other people are not currently hunting. Try to find something that is a little bit more weak that you're going to have more negotiation leverage to buy. I think those are typically where the better deals are in general. However, especially in this market. If you're selling a house, I would get that on the market ASAP. I don't know how long this window is going to stay open. At the current moment, we are not in a seller's market, but it is a balanced market, and it's hard to say how long this will hold on, especially with the rental and the for sale inventory continuing to rise. Now, that's all for today. My name is Ryan Taylor. I'm a licensed realtor here in the province of New Brunswick with Royal Page Atlantic at the Moncton office. The opinions in this video are my own. They do not represent the opinions of other members or affiliated organizations. Even though this is real estate advice, it might not be applicable to your situation, so contact a local qualified professional prior to making decisions related to real estate or finance. You can find me on Spotify, the New Brunswick Real Estate Podcast. Please follow and review there. And on YouTube, I am Ryan Taylor, MB Realtor. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, comment. I appreciate that. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at New Brunswick Real Estate on both of those. Thank you very much.